Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse. And yeah, not much preamble here. This week's just weird. And it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. Alright, look, full disclosure, I was hoping for a longer and slower come down than what we got here. I'm not that surprised that post-album bomb this week wound up flush with a lot of new arrivals and returns. That's par for the course, especially when multiple album bombs come back to back and they make their exits. But it wound up busier at a time when IRL I'm shorter on time than I would like to be, especially with the next longer video essay looming in view that's already written that just needs that standard 2 to 4 hours of filming and editing to get out the door. Incidentally, it'll probably be live in the next day or two on the main channel. Hope y'all swing around for that. And you know, if you want a teaser for the topic thereof, take a look at our top 10, where Ella Langley is sitting at the top for another week with Choosin' Texas. Yeah, it's about her, this song, Dandelion as a whole. Turns out when you get a lot of narratives slamming into each other, it's right for someone to cut through the thicket of all the nonsense and discourse. Anyway, she's here in the lead up to what's probably going to be a pretty big album bomb next week, with excellent streaming and good sales, although you might have noticed her radio slip rather sharply because when Nashville decides they're about done with the song, they drop it from their playlist aggressively, which is causing the radio numbers to fall off rather sharply. I mean, if something is ultimately going to take this out in 2 weeks, it's gonna be that. Late to get on board with it, but remarkably fast to get rid of it. Keep living down to your reputation, Music Row. Now, does that open the door for Man I Need by Olivia Dean in a couple weeks, going beyond number 2? Possibly, but I'm still kind of doubtful. The radio is still very much on board and streaming is up, but sales are down and it's gonna need every last bit of the margin to scrape out a lead. Granted, I Just Might by Bruno Mars, it's not that threatening in number 3. The radio is finally crested at the top, the sales are slipping, and there's just not enough streaming for serious reinforcement. And that means, and I can't believe I'm still saying this, Ordinary by Alex Warren has a shot to get higher beyond number 4. The streams are better, the radio's not budging on it. I don't think this is going away nearly as quickly as we all hoped. It did hold over Swim by BTS down to number 5. Turns out that the BTS army doesn't quite have the same gas in the tank 5 years after 2026, especially as the streaming fell back sharply. Radio growth has actually been pretty good, all things considered, but I'm sure not enough to satiate the fans, even though this song was giving them precious little to work with. Now, I'd like to say it opens a door for So Easy to Fall in Love by Olivia Dean at number 6, as the radio just loves it, but the streaming growth's been slow. It'll need a little bit more to truly get higher, which I can't say for Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters, which is holding at number 7 because both streaming and radio are remarkably stable, especially given all the other songs that are flailing around it. But now we got a new entry to the top 10, and one where I'm really intrigued how far it'll go. Be Her by Ella Langley at number 8. It explains why Choosin' Texas was jettisoned by Nashville radio if they're now pushing this instead, because why give an artist a chance to push 2 songs at once, especially when she's on a major upswing? And with streaming as strong as it is, I'm curious if the album bomb will shove it straight into the top 5 next week. It's possible. But it was enough to bowl past Stateside by Pink Pantheress and Zara Larsson at number 9. They're trying the radio push, but again, as I've said, it's probably too little too late, as the streaming is starting to fall off. Next week, it'll be the test if it's truly vulnerable there. And finally, holding on despite all my expectations, Folded by Kalani, still at number 10. This is one hell of a radio second wind, but is it enough to hold up? Well, at least for this week. Going further, we'll see. And on that note, our losers and dropouts, where in the latter group, there's just not that much that's worth mentioning. Just a bunch of Kanye West and BTS album bomb cuts. Yeah, I said what I said there. Speaking of which, that was also the story for our losers here, as from Kanye, we had Father with Travis Scott hit 31, All the Love with Andre Troutman at 37, Punch Drunk at 71, Whatever Works at 78, King at 79, and This Must at 98. Incidentally, I mentioned this in the comments in the description of my last video, but I really screwed up when talking about the Kanye West worst of the week in I Can't Wait. In misidentifying the sample of You Can't Hurry Love, I said it was by the Carpenters. It's by the Supremes. I have that song on a vinyl record on a shelf over there. I should have easily gotten that. The horrifying thing is that I then discovered in my research that Diana Ross actually also suffered from anorexia, the same as Karen Carpenter, in her case brought on by the terrible working conditions and pressure under Berry Gordy of Motown. So yeah, most of my rant somehow still works in a truly depressing way. Well, anyway, outside of that, BTS had Fire fall to 90 and Body to Body of 52. Luke Combs had Rethink Some Things collapsed to 65. And strangely, Elizabeth Taylor by Taylor Swift lost a lot of gains back to 45. Tough to say completely why here. Her radio growth was generally fine, but apparently the streaming really collapsed. Not sure what might have triggered that. Anyway, as expected, post-album bomb, there's a lot of returns and gains this week, and they're just all over the goddamn place. I'm not even sure where to start with some of these. Now, some of the returns are not that surprising. FDO by Pooh Shiesty, as predicted, surged back to 48 off the back of his recent, let's call it, criminality and antics, and I wasn't surprised to see Don Toliver sneak a few songs in, like Tuition at 85, Tiramisu at 86, and Secondhand with Rima at 97. Then there are the songs that appear to just have more motion and just needed the space to come back, like Ever Since You Left Me by Max B and French Montana at 80, or Butterflies by Brent Faiyaz at 93. But finally, we got some country returning that's largely good, if not great, like Say Why by Zach Bryan at 80, Rocky Mountain Low by Corey Kent and Co Wetzel at 84, and Can't Sit Still by Lainey Wilson at 96. Gonna be interesting to see if other women in mainstream country see a boost alongside Ella Langley's success. Rising tide lifts all ships and all that. At least it's somewhat true with our gains. Beautiful Things by Megan Maroney rose to 59, as did Dry Spell by Casey Musgraves at 61. But country as a whole had a strong week, if not exactly a good one. From Morgan Wallen, I Ain't Coming Back with Post Malone is somehow still gaining at 30, and Don't We hit 62. Ain't a Bad Life by Thomas Rhett and Jordan Davis hit 53. Davis would also get Turn This Truck Around up to 60. What He'll Never Have by Dylan Scott's up to 55. Y'all can do the world a favor and not make this one of the worst songs charting this year an actual thing. That'd be swell. And Plastic Cigarette by Zach Bryan's up to 87. But the rest here, again, all over the place. Earrings by Malcolm Todd continues to rise up to 42, alongside Freaking Out by Dexter and the Moonrocks at 51. I'm legit shocked a rock song is surging this much. And we got credible revivals. We got The Visitor by Sienna Spiro at 69, Who Knows by Daniel Caesar at 70, Mrs. Trendsetter by Lil Baby at 73, Zoo by Shakira at 77, and off the debut, Silent Treatment by Freya Sky up to 88. The rest? Well, What You Need by Thames is a thing at 56. Go Away by Weezer is not living up to the title at 62. Rein Me In by Sam Fender and Olivia Dean looks like it's got proper momentum at 64. And Dano by Peso Pluma and Tito Double P, it's actually stuck around. It's at 75. But where this week gets actively stranger is probably in our new arrivals. We got a healthy number of them from a lot of new faces. And unfortunately, we're starting with number 100, Sweet Boy by Malcolm Todd.
Baby, can we go home now? You think it's time to give up? We're on our own now. No place to drive you crazy. Don't share a home now. I'm okay till tonight.
Yeah, that's what we need, more Malcolm Todd. And in this case, a song from 2023 where the Steve Lacy ripoff comparison feels all the more stark and relevant. And this is bad for it. The utterly sickly guitar with the rinky-dink final solo, the cheap-sounding vocal pickup and rickety drums, the gauzy atmosphere where Todd clearly thinks he's just killing it and just comes across as pitiful. And that failure of execution really feels striking in the lyrics. See, he's getting attention for his music, and the partner just isn't getting the attention to the same degree, and said partner feels insecure. But then Todd tries to reassure them that they're doing just fine. They just need a little bit of space, and so does he, at least until tonight when he wants them to come over. But it's the verse where you get lines like, I want you to go, I wrote it in bold, yeah, I got a plan, and you can't be involved. He's trying to come across like he's a little bit of a player. He's he's kind of smooth, he's got it all together until he absolutely does not. But I just don't buy the baseline assumption, and it comes across as teetering on the line between pathetic and asshole. I'm repulsed in multiple ways. And yeah, this is, once again, terrible. I don't know why we're trying to resurrect more from this dweeb from 3 years ago. We can stop anytime now. Number 99, Say So by Dan and Shay.
You up every time you fall. If you're going through hell, you're not alone. If you need somebody, say so.
Interesting observation, it's not a Doja Cat cover, although that would be pretty fun, especially if they did the Nicki Minaj remix. Or at the very least, it'd be more interesting, because Dan and Shay have long lost their luster for me, so color me a bit surprised that this might be the most instrumental muscle that they have had in some time, with the wheedling twinkle of guitars behind the cycling acoustics, backing up a stronger groove and a more forceful hook, where I was almost reminded a little of the softer pop rock acts of the mid-2000s than anything close to mainstream pop country or boyfriend country, albeit with considerably more vocal overproduction, although if you know pop rock in that era, it was also a thing then. But once you get over that blip of surprise, that's kind of all there is to this song. It's borderline self-esteem anthem territory, where Dan and Shay are telling you to keep your head up, and if you're going through hell, say so. I mean, on the one hand, being open about your feelings and your angst, that's not a bad thing, especially for a lot of men. But on the other hand, a lot more people don't have a lot of qualms saying what their problems are. It's more getting something actually done about them that's the issue. So yeah, the song's just kind of mediocre. I'm going there. Number 95, Boston by Stella Lefty.
And I'm telling you, baby, this is the part where I'd run, but I like it when you're nice, like it when you're nice to me.
You know, there was a time when I'd see an act going viral on TikTok and think, there's a real shot she might be an independent talent who might have a unique voice or vibe, but increasingly I don't think that, so let's introduce Stella Lefty. She's out of Los Angeles, she's the daughter of a billionaire, she put out her first EP last year, she's already assigned to Atlantic, insert all the Nepo baby discourse here, and this is actually not the song of hers that's most famous. Apparently it's called Thinking About You. But she's got this light bit of pop country, and I guess it's fine. Honestly, it's songs like these that give more credence to any of the Nepo baby discourse, because there's so little to make it sound that distinct or interesting. It's cleanly and warmly produced, but compositionally really stock. There are touches of sweeter guitar, and I guess the sentiment is fine, with Stella Lefty describing how she doesn't normally fall in love, but this time she did, and she bought in, and they're on a train back to Boston for whatever reason. And sure, the hook is decent, but Stella Lefty's breathy, often pitchy and sharp vocal delivery, it conveys a muted, twangy exuberance that just doesn't have a lot to it. It sounds amateurish, and that can have some charm, but it's otherwise so nondescript. Discovering that Noah Kahan co-wrote it makes way too much sense, in that the songs that flush themselves with a lot of patter and say impressively little. In a just world, this would never have charted. You wouldn't have remembered it existed. It would have been awash in somewhere in Spotify. It's not interesting. Next, number 94, Be Like a Woman by Chris Rainbow. Okay, this one came right the hell out of nowhere for me. At first, when I heard the late Chris Rainbow charted, my passing thought was, I didn't know the band Rainbow was named after one of its members, but no, turns out this is a completely different British musician, most notable for working with the Alan Parsons Project in the mid-70s, before being the semi-regular frontman of the mostly obscure progressive rock band Camel briefly in the 80s, where neither of his two featured albums are considered among the band's classics. This, however, was from his self-produced third solo album in 1979, and I'm honestly a little baffled. This is what the kids are making go viral on TikTok? Where the first band I was reminded of most was goddamn Styx, down to the breathy pileup of synthetic overdubs that don't quite obscure how screechy he sounds. Now, as someone who can be a little bit more forgiving to Styx and this era of singer-songwriters than most, I also recognize when the formula is kind of operating on a shoestring budget, including a saxophone that's struggling to have any presence in the mix, with the weedy guitars and the rushes of chimes and the very workmanlike drums. I probably appreciated the tighter bass line the most to anchor a slice of progressive pop rock that is touching on some yacht rock. It's got a little nifty shift into the bridge that's kind of compositionally cool, but it's also not saying much. Then there's the lyrics, where on the one hand I can recognize the heartbroken yearning of watching your love move on and you're hoping for that one last chance, but on the other hand, in the execution, it's anchored in the phrase, "be like a woman to me," which is kind of sounding like a nerdy dude trying to project machismo and failing miserably. The sentiment does not land at all. Folks, I'm not against a revival of progressive pop rock in this era. I like a lot of progressive pop rock, but my God, you can do way better than this. I ain't impressed. Number 92, Girl You're Taking Home by Ella Langley.
Let's go, then why not the girl you're taking home?
Okay, this is just weird at this point. Ella Langley's likely going to get an album bomb next week, yet we're going back to a bonus cut from the deluxe reissue of her debut to get traction, a project aptly called Still Hungover. After listening to it, I honestly can't complain. I would have liked more of this smoky atmosphere on Dandelion. The haunted guitar and the shuffling percussion around the organ with a nice distant guitar solo, with slightly better production from Will Bundy, who tended to be one of the biggest frustrations of Still Hungover. All the soundtrack Langley's misery at seeing her ex clean up his life for his new partner, where she so clearly wanted that for them, especially when this guy is apparently still carrying a torch for her. The weary bitterness is palpable, and Ella Langley does a great job committing to being that other woman where she knows deep down there was no reason for her to be cast aside. It's just capricious, and that gives the song some actual edge. Yeah, I know Dandelion was softer and more introspective by design, and this wouldn't really have fit, but we could have used a little more like it, because it's a very good song. Number 91, Self-Aware by Temper City.
My mind gets in the way. I know you think that I'm always way too self-aware. Oh, we could never be together, but it's nice to play pretend. I wish that I could lie, but I'm way too self-aware.
I don't want to get conspiratorial with cases like this, especially when the easy answer tends to be TikTok virality, you can't explain it. But this is the second case in a row where I'm looking sideways at the act and wondering how on earth they managed to debut at all. For those of you who don't know, Temper City is an Israeli by way of Los Angeles band that appears not to be on a major label, but somehow went so viral as to capture a shocking amount of traction with this debut single. That's right. This is their one song at time of recording. They have less subscribers on YouTube than my Billboard Breakdown channel. I could extrapolate and say that given the most recent purchase of TikTok and the tweak of that algorithm, that the Ellison family might have a desire to platform certain voices over others, and that's like white Christian billionaire stuff. Let's not get conspiratorial here. I don't think I have to go that far though, because it's pretty damn mediocre and underwhelming for what it is, which is commercial core by way of the mid to late 2010s indie sleaze cliches, the distorted vocal filters, the abuse of reverb, the minor key colicky vibe, the squawking frontman who sounds like a less powerful Dan Reynolds. Then there's the writing, which is basically an extrapolated Maroon 5 song with somehow less swagger, a miserable relationship that's on the rocks where he doesn't think this girl should hang her hopes on him. He's just so self-aware about how none of this would ever work. She's so hot, yet she's so into him. I mean, it's more believable than when Malcolm Todd does it, but is that really saying much? What makes this eye-rolling for me is the formula is so painstakingly obvious. This sucked damn near a decade ago, and it hasn't gotten better. So no, not a fan. Number 89, Hate How You Look by Josh Ross.
Hate how you're happier when I'm about to lose my mind. You look so good and damn, that's why it feels so wrong. Girl, I hate how you look moving on.
So here's an interesting case. A Canadian country song that actually broke through past the Nashville stranglehold and hit the Hot 100. Ross was born in small town Ontario. He moved just outside of Toronto. He's actually run up a surprising number of Canadian charting hits, with this breaking into the top 30 up here while being signed under Mercury Nashville, including opening up for a lot of bro country acts that are down south. Now, he didn't write this song, which is all about being increasingly frustrated that this girl looks incredibly happy moving on from him. He hates how she looks like that. But what's interesting is that there's way less focus on there being another dude in the picture than her just having joy and the fact that he's miserable and he's plainly not over her. He's not being the bigger man, and by the end of listening to him, you kind of get why she might be more happy elsewhere. If it's a victory lap, it's for her, not him. And I don't use the term victory lap loosely here, because while the production of the song is way more touched up and polished than it probably should be, especially in that underweight groove, it's buoyant and upbeat with bright guitars and a lot of plentiful pedal steel, where Ross sounds like the last person at the party not having any fun. And if the song had done anything by the final hook to show him pull himself together, move on himself, I'd probably be way more positive on it as a whole. That said, it's way more synthetic than I would like, but Ross has some ragged charisma, and the sentiment's at least in the right direction. I'm not gonna call it great, but it's at least decent. I'll give him that. And finally, number 74, Jane by the Long Faces.
Is dirtied by the fools who adore you, only to find you out.
Alright, I guess I gotta blame TikTok for this again, but I'm truly baffled how this even showed up on anyone's radar. The Long Faces were a UK progressive rock band from the late 2010s. They had a bunch of reportedly well-liked singles and one album in 2020. There's a distant connection to Black Country New Road, which should not surprise anyone. That scene is pretty tight-knit. And they haven't released much of anything since 2023, when they announced a new band era that promptly went nowhere after one single. But apparently this song is winding up in a lot of anime TikTok edits. I'm seeing a lot tied to Jujutsu Kaisen, which contributes to its virality despite first coming out in 2018, and okay, it's interesting at least. The frontman gives me a lot of Julian Casablancas vibes by way of distinctly English post-punk vamping, with a slightly wonky rollick and brittle patter of drums before that squealing lead guitar slices through. And that places the song's tone in a bit of a weird place, especially given the content, which is commendably oblique. A bored rich girl who might just be a serial killer who can barely control her violent urges behind the mask, where her suitors are only now starting to pierce it, but they're getting what they deserve. Right. Truthfully, the narrator seems largely bemused by the whole activity. The guy who walks in on the bloody mess with a sarcastic quip at the ready. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3, the song screams of Asterian vibes walking in on the dark urge. And while that's a very weird line to walk and a weird reference for me to make, I do remember a lot of the theatrical emo of the mid-2000s that had a similar-ish tone, and that pricks just enough of my nostalgia. So yeah, it's kind of a weird song, but if there's one to bring back, I think it's pretty good. I don't mind it at all. And that's this week. Again, it's weird, totally all over the place, but at least the worst falls out fast, with Malcolm Todd and Sweet Boy taking the bottom spot over Self-Aware by Temper City as the dishonorable mention. Man, that song gives me bad vibes. I don't want to overthink it. The rest... You know the best I'm going to give this preemptive, but Ella Langley's clinching it with Girl You're Taking Home, just ahead of Jane by the Long Faces. Yeah, I'm still shocked that it's here, but not really about to complain. But next week, yeah, let's see if Ella Langley can drive it out of the park. I think she can. Stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.